Thank you for viewing this American Sewing Guild educational series on Meld. Meld may also be called setting the stitches. Melding stitches is a very simple process and makes a big difference in quality project construction. Melding stitches embeds the seam-line stitches into the fabric. It is important to meld stitches prior to pressing open a seam or otherwise working with a seam line. Melding is sometimes called setting the seam or setting the stitches. Melding or setting the seam is done after sewing a seam. While sewing the first seams of the project, preheat the iron to the correct temperature for the fabric being used. If you are not sure of the fiber content of the fabric, begin with a lower heat setting and gradually increase it. As always, test prior to working on the project fabric. Melding the stitches is nothing more than keeping the seam line closed and using the up and down motion of pressing to embed the stitches into the fabric. Place the iron down on top of the stitching line for a couple of seconds, lift up the iron, and move to the next area along the seam, overlapping pressed areas. Let's watch how to meld a seam. Set the preheated iron on the seam line using a press cloth if necessary. Pick up the iron and move it to the next section, overlapping ironed areas. Remember, you want to meld every seam prior to pressing it open or doing some other technique with the seam. By doing this, the stitches will be set into the fabric and produce a beautifully constructed and pressed seam. Thank you for viewing this American Sewing Guild video. If you have any questions, email Ramona@asg.org. The American Sewing Guild is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to people who believe sewing is a rewarding and creative activity. If you enjoyed this video, join ASG to view our library of in-depth educational videos on various sewing topics. They are free to our members. Members also enjoy discounts from vendors who support our organization, along with many other benefits.